And we are back here with Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, who was at the Payback show tonight. And we are getting his reaction to the CM Punk termination by AEW and also Tony Khan's handling of it tonight. So you've had some hours to digest all of this news, Brandon. And what are some of your takeaways?
I was going for a walk here in Pittsburgh, and I got back to the hotel, and I checked my phone, and there was a CM Punk termination notice. It leaves a lot of questions, some of which will be asked, maybe not all of which will be answered tomorrow night. But there's a lot of questions around, does he have a non-compete? Is Jack Perry still being disciplined? But we saw Tony Khan speak before the crowd in Chicago tonight as well.
Were you surprised that he addressed it to the extent that he did? I mean, this was more than just like a boilerplate. We have agreed to part ways. We wish him the best. Like this was, I mean, Tony Khan like literally said his life was in danger because of this incident, to the point that, I mean, this was very harshly worded, even though he was in the statement, they were trying to be complimentary towards him. I mean, this was pretty definitive painting of Phil Brooks and their relationship coming out of this incident.
I'd be curious to know what he means by that. Supposedly this happened in front of him within his sight, this fight between Jack Perry and Punk, and reportedly Punk and Tony, Punk especially is reported to have chewed out Tony before this, related to what I don't know. I'm trying to
potentially others like that, like production people that could have been in danger from this whole thing as well. That brings another scope to this, about just like this was certainly painted as this was more than just two wrestlers that were getting into some kind of altercation with one another. Like this escalated to a degree that there was at least concern for others.
Yeah, and I can see this is somebody who's had more than one fight here in AEW, and it probably creates a liability for a hostile work environment or an unsafe work environment from somebody else potentially at some point. So I can see plenty of reason why he would be advised to fire Punk. Just trying to think what he's thinking in doing this. Is people who have attended an AEW show know Tony will appear before the crowd off camera, when they're not live, at least once per show. I think oftentimes twice. He'll show up pre-show, show up between the Rampage and the Dynamite taping. So not surprising that he would come out and address the crowd. I think this is one of the nights he would have been better served to take off, though.
So, Brandon, what do you think happens from this point on? Do you think we get no mentions at all on AEW TV from CM Punk, or sorry, from of CM Punk, I should say? How do you think Tony?
I think so, because there were very few mentions of him in that time after All Out 2022 until he came back. Right, he was kind of persona non grata, and the relationship was unknown whether he would come back. So I would think. Yeah.
And he was wiped out of the opening, I believe, today.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Was it interesting to you at all, knowing that it sounded like he had two separate contracts with the company? He had a wrestler agreement, and then he had an employment agreement. Like they did pluralize like agreements and specified like these two, which is interesting. And I would think like there are probably several of them that have these sort of,
Jericho has said on the record that he is one of them.
Right. And at least this confirms like Punk, like and that gets into like an interesting, potential fallout of this, is that you're not just talking about an independent contractor. This was an employee, and therefore being fired with cause. Like what is he being, what is being withheld from the company based on this firing, and what action or non-action that a Phil Brooks takes following this?
Yeah, that's a good question for a legal expert, is what does him being an employee as well as an independent contractor having dual status, how does that change things? If he was just an independent contractor, maybe it would be different. Maybe the consequences, maybe the urgency to get rid of him wouldn't be as strong as they are.
There's also another question, and these are all questions for Tony Khan, but any kind of, like, you're firing someone with cause, there's probably not some kind of like non-disparagement clause that's in this. Like, we are not two parties that are leaving here, with the highest thoughts of one another. And that naturally, just seeing the history here of Punk, of when I think this is someone that will very much want to have his side out there at a given time.
At some point, he'll have to be a guest on someone else's podcast this time. I don't think Cole Cabana will have him this time. But yeah, there's a lot of questions around, including, does he have a non-compete? Could he theoretically go on Raw Monday night? I don't know. Or maybe he has some sort of 90-day non-compete. I had no idea. But yeah, I will not be surprised to see the CM Punk saga continue.
As somebody who, has been following basically Tony Khan's entire sort of like media dealing history, did you feel like tonight was maybe a bit out of character with the way he dealt with this issue so head on with the public? And do you think it might signal any sort of change with the way he might deal with the media in the future?
I doubt it. I think he does. Even as the pay-per-views have increased, he still does as many media calls as he does. We still got a media call leading up to All In, and even though a week later was All Out, still got a media call. Still going to have 2 press conferences. I think he likes to talk, and he's not going to stop talking.
I'm pretty confident he will be there at the press conference tomorrow. Like you would,
absolutely.
Like I could see certain situations where he would not appear at this one, but I don't see Tony Khan being that guy that would not be at this press conference tomorrow, knowing what the dominant subject matter is going to be.
Yeah. I wonder if, he's such an ECW fan. I wonder if he sort of thinks, what he did tonight before the show. Well, maybe that's what Paul Heyman would have done. Paul and Tony are 2 very, very different people, very different public speakers. But yeah, that was sort of my thought watching it as I sat watching a WWE show, which that was very overshadowed by the news on my phone.
So you've probably already done some of this number crunching, Brandon, but after 11 episodes of Collision, the show has averaged, with CM Punk at the helm, 577,000 viewers, right at a 0.20. And if we take away that tremendous first week that they did, the last 10 would be a 0.18. College football is now getting up and running, and CM Punk is gone. Do you see that this is going to? Do you see any positivity for AEW moving forward? Of how are they going to handle this, or are there going to be? Is Tony going to have an ace up his sleeve in terms of a big key signing, or do you think this is really going to be a hit to the Saturday night show?
I think it was a hit when he was gone. It was a hit to ratings when he was gone last time. And we see ratings for Dynamite, which we have the longest record for, and Rampage has fallen off as an important show, whereas Dynamite has not. And Dynamite's ratings, which is sort of a like-to-like comparison over year over year, has continued to be down year over year. And I think Punk's absence from Collision will hurt Collision. There's always a vacuum for new stars to be created in his place, but they're not going to be as big as CM Punk anytime soon. But I don't know, do you guys have thoughts on that?
Well, I think Sean Ross Sapp hit it on the head when he was on with us this week, that I think if you're a Mercedes Moné or an Edge, you're in a really advantageous position because, yeah. I mean, I think you want to have, like, how many people are out there that can come in and be difference makers? And it's not even proven that Edge would come in. It would be a fresh scenery for Edge, but it's not like he's coming off, like, he didn't have that same impact in WWE that a Punk had, and they came in relatively, a year apart from one another. Those are interesting cases, but I think short term, this hurts. Long term will be the bigger question. That overall, do they get over this hump? If it opens the doors more and you're getting now talent back and forth on both shows, like tonight we had the Young Bucks on Collision for the first time, that you at least have access to all of your star power. But I do think short term, this will hurt Collision.
Even symbolically, he's not replaceable at all in terms of what CM Punk was able to mean for the AEW brand as being an alternative to WWE that has been the company that has dominated the wrestling industry for at least the last 20, 23 years. He was somebody who left WWE on bad terms and was beloved by hardcore fans. And he was perfectly suited to be the top star of this upstart new wrestling brand that was going to, in some ways, compete with WWE. And there's nobody who can take that place. So it will be, it's a vacuum for others to fill, but it's in many ways, I think symbolically, thematically, he's not replaceable.
Do you think, Wade, that this is any chance of the last that we have seen of CM Punk with a major company?
I think anything's possible. I I think at this point, trying to act as a counter move with the people who are now his new enemies in AEW by going to their competition, I think would make perfect sense. I think the only question is whether or not the WWE would take him. But I really do think anything is possible.
I think it's certainly like WWE is in a position where I don't think they need anything at this point. It's not as though they need that shot in the arm that a Punk would represent. But I mean, the history of pro wrestling is somewhat of this level of star power. There's always going to be someone knocking at your door. Just the difference in this wrestling economy is I feel there's two companies that he could make the level of amount that he has been accustomed to making in pro wrestling for so many of these years. And one of them is definitely not coming back to you. And the question is WWE, that door has been sealed for over, almost a decade. But certainly there will be that to me is that's the only option left for him.
And if you're WWE, like, how do you calculate it? Obviously, there's benefits in having him. He was AEW's top draw. It takes a shot at AEW to take him away. And, there's comparisons to what Cody has done there that has been a benefit to WWE in that way. But there are clearly risks too, right? Like, he may already have strained relationships with important people in WWE that he would have to get along with to work there.
It's not even a case where it was just all the bad blood was with Vince McMahon. Like, he had a lot with Paul Levesque. You could argue more with Paul Levesque than Vince McMahon. I mean, it would
because he worked with Paul Levesque in the ring. Yeah.
And that was, the famous final speech before he walked out of telling Paul Levesque, I should have beaten you all those years ago. And, it's, again, they're not in a position where they need it. And I mean, that to me is, it's all in what is their motivation. Like, you certainly have the business proposition of why it would be very valuable to you. And then the question of, is he free and clear to walk over there? Because you can already see people are already booking their CM Punk return at the Survivor Series in Chicago. I
guess if you're WWE, maybe the lower risk thing is to do something more short term, like a 6 months or 12 months or something like that. So you're not locked into this guy for years.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the safest bet. Before we wrap up, how do you feel CM Punk is now viewed after this run, and compared it to a year ago with All Out, and now that this last year has unfolded as it has, and this attempt at a reconciliation has largely blown up?
It only lasted from June 17th to today. So that's 2.5 months or so. I still think, like, if we're talking like the big picture, and I noticed it's a coincidental, it's almost Hall of Fame voting season again, I would still vote for him. I think I would. This is not a positive to him, but everything else that he's clearly been a benefit to the ratings. He's clearly been a benefit to, I think he gets some amount of credit for this All In show and building AEW up to the brand that it's become to do what it's done. It's not like he's done something so horrible and egregious. Obviously, it's worth firing him over. I don't just have any strong disagreement with firing him. But he's still, I think, one of the most important figures in wrestling of his time. And it's unfortunate that it has to end this way. And he has to hold a grudge against people who he feels has wronged him. And he can't let it go. But that's the world we live in.
It is something, like, it's very Phil Brooks that if this is like the swan song of like a wrestling career, of getting into like some backstage incident, telling off the boss, being coaxed into going out and wrestling in front of 80,000 people, going to the back, we get a Nando's stopover, and then he swings by Cauliflower Alley Club, gives a speech, and by the end of the week, he's been fired. I mean, this was just an insane 7 days when you look at it, which is kind of the only way this could have ended, in this tornado of chaos.
I think of something in the old WCM Punk DVD that was made like in 2012 or something, and there's like talking heads calling him, the last territory guy, because he came off the indies, I guess, which I think was overstated. But I can't help but think about, like, man, it's like Bruiser Brody or something who just recurringly have conflicts with people, and I think my
and he's applauded for it. Like, he's looked at as like, right, that's not a guy
that put up with this shit. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's very much placed as like this hero that stood up for himself, and even though like he was very unprofessional in certain situations, I see a lot of parallels there. I mean, Punk made the exact comparison of like that's was the kind of career he saw himself having, like big star in Japan that would have little profile in the US, but modeling himself after a Stan Hansen or a Bruiser Brody.
Yeah, and in another era, would the physical fights that he's been in and the conflict that he's been involved in, would it be as big of a deal? Would it be so interrupting of his career if this was, I don't know, the 80s or the 70s? I suspect not, and that's not a justification, but I
I
suspect
don't
it
think
would be
we'd know
different.
about it either.
Right, you wouldn't even know about it. You'd read about it in somebody's book decades later. Yeah, and in that way, I think he's kind of like one of these territory wrestlers who, would, that's how you resolve a conflict, is probably how he thinks. Let's just have it out and fight each other, and that's a way to resolve a problem.
Way and I were talking about this too. Like the fact is, like, there is footage of this incident, and you have to think that this footage has to certainly place like Jack Perry in a safe enough position that they were comfortable keeping him. Because I would think like if this was, both, like if there was enough fault on both and you had potential injury, like just putting other people in danger, I think they wouldn't have thought twice of releasing Jack Perry on top of it. Like I don't know. I don't know what this footage says, but it certainly does tell you that, like, I thought Jack Perry, there was a reasonable chance that he would be let go as well here. And to the best of our knowledge, he is not.
Yeah. According to Fightful's report, he at least is not aware that he's been fired. Yeah. Who knows what the video shows and what really happened? We weren't there. But curious to know whether he's still being disciplined, whether he's still being suspended.
Well, Brandon, thanks a lot for joining us in lieu of a payback press conference. I hope they don't yank the all-out press conference tomorrow. That would really make your road trip a bit. Well, it's still being there. What was the quick question on Payback? Like the crowd was full tonight. They had their ups and downs throughout it, and you got a front row seat to Cinnamon Toast Crunch for a whole match.
I did. Yes, the cage match was very good. The crowd was super hot at the beginning. LA Knight was super over. Jey Uso was way more over than I expected him to be. I know he's a surprise being there anyway. I got to see Keiji Muto. He was just hundreds of feet away from me. Crowd was hot.
I thought he was going to blow mist at Seth's spine, and he would start selling.
He was shown on camera, right?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if he was or not. But yeah, the crowd was pretty strong for, I would say, the first 2/3. I tweeted something saying I think this is just right in terms of a length. Last two matches were not as hot as I think they would have been had they happened, an hour earlier. So it was past 11 o'clock, but it was a pretty good show.
All right. Well, Brandon will be up Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, patreon.com/WrestleNomics. And you can get all the fallout of the CM Punk saga, as we have dubbed it on this show. So
more CM Punk talk and other WrestleNomics issues like the all-in attendance, a little bit of payback business. I'll be coming to you live. This is free for everybody. Usually it's subscriber only, but the first episode of each month is free for everyone to join in and watch and listen. And I will be coming to you, I expect, hopefully, from the Pittsburgh terminal before I fly to Chicago tomorrow.
All right. Maybe some breakdowns of estimates of some of the top merchandise sellers out there. Estimates. Yes. Educated estimates.
Estimates. Yes, please. Estimates.
All right. Thanks a lot, Brandon, for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have fun.
Brandon.
And Brandon will be on with me later on this week, as we will, I'm sure, be still talking about the story. Any final thoughts from you, Wade, just in terms of the what is next? Any questions that you have on your mind and that you think Tony Khan is going to be asked about tomorrow? Because I cannot fathom many other topics beyond this being asked of Tony Khan at the press conference.
Sure. Yeah. I imagine like he took today to really say his piece and say probably a lot more than what we all were expecting. And I imagine that might be it.
Did he say too much in your mind? Like it was
say
very
too
harshly
much?
worded. And I mean, I'm looking at this from just all sides of, Tony Khan has been very careful in all of these situations. And tonight, like this was the most vociferous he was in terms of
the most transparent. You could say
the most transparent, but I mean, stating things that, listen, if like, I don't know what the next step is going to be for a Phil Brooks, but I mean, this is any lawyer that is watching this, it's like every word is going to be analyzed through with a fine tooth comb, and that is like that's the game in something like this. This can
When
get
you
very
say
nasty.
too much, are you saying did he put like maybe himself in maybe legal danger by saying like his life was in danger?
I mean, he literally said his life was in danger. That's
Mhm.
not like that was a literal quote in this. So
And you think that was too much? And is that something that could be used against him?
I have no idea what the answer is. I'm just stating, like, Tony Khan, again, like, he has always been very non-confrontational in these kinds of statements, and this was a departure from that.
Yeah, which is what
And
I
should
think.
be applauded. Like, listen, how many times do we talk about,
Mhm.
it's a no comment. This would have been a very easy one to just put out a boilerplate statement by press release. You know what? To the point, it is not like too many people were necessarily expecting Punk to be there this weekend. I
Mhm.
appreciate the fact that they didn't just dangle it so you were buying this pay-per-view thinking he would be there, because they could have thought, let's get out of this weekend and we put this announcement out Monday after the pay-per-view. And instead, they put it out in like with the crowd in this arena in Chicago for 2 nights, and then he went out there and listen, he faced the music, and you can state what you want, but you can't say he ran from this.
I think that was partially done for the quality of the show too, knowing that the fans can get all their booze out at him before the show started, probably diminished some of those throughout
Or
the
it
rest
could have
of it.
started a night of just this crowd being pissed off and they were going to take it out on the show. I don't know if it was so cut and dry that just let them all get their anger out now and then they'll have nothing left for the show.
Possible, but at some point, I think there was enough pressure from everybody to get him to give us an answer as soon as he knew it. And from the sounds of things, you know, he probably didn't know during the press media phone call, and in between that time
I'm
and
sure he
now,
didn't. I'm sure he would have loved to have had it all wrapped up, or at least like,
Yeah.
let's rip the Band-Aid off as early as we can in the week.
and this might be as early as they can rip the Band-Aid, you know. And I think this is honestly the most transparent thing you can do for your audience, but telling them as soon as you know that, hey, this person is not going to be on the show, in fact he's terminated, and this is why. He gave you everything you could just, you know, reasonably want, you know, barring maybe like the contents of this footage, for instance. So how does he handle it? I'm sure like maybe he'll repeat a lot of the same answers. I'm not expecting too much additional detail to come from like the press conference. And then that honestly, like, I don't know if you'd hear much more about CM Punk from this point on, you know, if he's no longer associated with the company, at least from Tony Khan. What reason would he have to speak?
Oh, I'm sure we will hear from CM Punk at some point. I don't think
Yeah.
he's just going to go home and write comics, and that's the last we hear of CM Punk.
Unless there's some legal reason why he can't.
There might be, but yeah. I would state for the way it was handled, I think you have to applaud that they went out and did this as they did. It's going to anger a lot of people. Like this is a very divisive decision.
Everything he does is people are very passionate about on any side. So this is to be expected. Yeah.
And the fact is, like Wednesday, there were no CM Punk chants, at least not audible on Dynamite. And then tonight, you know, there were certainly more, but even like we heard, like there were people chanting Colt Cabana or shutting down the CM Punk chants. Like it's not as though just being in Chicago, and granted, you probably do have some tourists from outside the state, but it's not like this is just Team CM Punk. And 2 years ago,
and this is Chicago.
Yeah, like I think like there is this mix, I think, of people, of even the diehard CM Punk fans that do understand the conflict. And this is sort of like what they appreciate of a Punk. Like put this guy in the WWE setting 10 years ago, and this was the guy raging against the company that was WWE. Well, now he is perceived to be fighting against this company of AEW that I think has
it's a different authority,
more sympathy for the audience that I think sees this as, you know, there are those that are going to defend and those that oppose Punk. And then there's many in the middle who I think can see the positive of Punk. We saw the positive of Punk in that Cauliflower Alley speech. Like you watch that guy for 45 minutes. It's like, this is the guy you would want running a locker room in 2023. And we also see the opposite. And people are not just this instant, like you can't just label people good, bad. These are individuals that have different temperaments, and Punk has a side to all of this. And Punk, I think, had in mind a vision of what he wanted this locker room to be. And I think if he were to share his vision with a lot of fans, even his detractors, they would probably be on board with what this guy's vision was. And where the conflict comes is his direction and how to get there. And it was riddled with a lot of problems for this company of how you get to this vision of what you want this locker room to resemble, what you want this company to resemble. And there were a lot of competing factors. And being on a team, it requires you sometimes to have to work with people that you don't get along with. And there was certainly a lot of that.
He's a great creator. He's a great artist, and the fact that I think we shower accolades upon his work. I mean, as recent as Sunday, had a great match with Samoa Joe. He's a great artist
under the circumstances of what he was just involved with, and came out and listen. I thought he was a total pro in that match. After what he gets into this altercation, and then we realize he's thinking of like not even he's basically talked into doing the match, and he came out there and put in a great 15 minutes with Samoa Joe.
That's never been in doubt. He's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but he's a bad people person. And I feel in this AEW environment, that's only exposed that. I don't know. At this stage, like, I don't know if I'd love to see him jump right back into professional wrestling. I would really love to hear about some form of just self-reflection, because yes, we can lay blame everywhere, and like everybody else is not innocent in all of this. It definitely takes other people, like whoever you want to point at as a potential instigator.
Every single party attached to this story, if wise, can sit back and they can learn something from this. Nobody, I think, came out of this with a 100% track record. Far from it. Everyone made mistakes along the way. There were errors in how this was handled or not handled, and it became a powder keg. And ultimately, I think everybody knew today this was inevitable, that at some point it was just a question of how many times were you going to try and put out these fires before you just could not contain them anymore. And it just so happened today was the day.
Well, there's arguing, and then I think there's physical confrontation in the workplace. And that's another level that should not even be excused whatsoever in any sort of adult environment, much like even in schools, in the playground, it's not excused. From the sounds of it, I mean, this is 2 physical altercations now. And again, maybe, the first one shouldn't necessarily be compared to this one because there's no footage of it. And it's a lot of he said, she said. But the fact that it seems like now at least you can maybe call this as some form of pattern that a guy would get into a physical altercation at work. That's cause to be for concern, for anybody looking to hire him.
If this happened again and something happened, like, listen, they're around all this equipment, a lighting truss falls over because 2 guys are brawling or something, and someone's injured in the line of work, and we have a pattern to establish this that was not rectified. I mean, it's just, this is not 1970 territorial wrestling, and this is not, and that seems to be the defense of like that.
There's no excuse even for 1970 territorial wrestling. I mean, that shit sounds so completely moronic, even back then.
The history of professional wrestling, it's built on some very bizarre traditions.
It's how children solve their problems. We're talking about $1 million companies, getting $1 billion deals here, and this is no way for anybody as a grown adult in a business world to act.
And that's another theme to all of this is WBD and how they view this. They realized this is a big star that was going to carry our Saturday night property, and this feels like the circus. And they had to ultimately eliminate this problem, but they are going to still be held to a very high standard. And when you're looking at what is, to me, the solutions for Collision are, number one, you've eliminated this silent split of talent that can't go. Christopher Daniels can now, the head of talent relations, can appear on both shows in a capacity. You have the options out there of, do you like the option of, does this invigorate a Tony Khan to go out aggressively for an Adam Copeland? Or do you work with what you have? Do you need something?
Yeah. So first of all, like I think we all feel Mercedes Moné, or even the combination of Mercedes and an Adam Copeland, are not equals to what CM Punk might represent for sort of the ethos of AEW. It really was perfect, and it's screwed up now, and that's really unfortunate for everybody. I think AEW should look within themselves. They have such a roster of people. I mean, MJF, when he started in this company, was not the level where he was at right now, and look at where he is. Make your own CM Punk. Like I mean, sure, rely on like an Edge or a Mercedes, to maybe change some of the headlines to be able to say, hey, like we got, two of your favorite stars. It's going to be a fresh direction, whatever. But like build your own guys. I'm very curious to see. We just talked about this, like, on Ask Away. If Shawn Michaels and Brett never left, would we have had Steve Austin and The Rock and Triple H and Mankind? Sometimes like this sort of thing needs to happen for the next generation to take a step up, and hopefully that's what can happen in this situation.
We are probably going to be talking about this a lot over the coming days. So if there's more to discuss, we will. But we do have to go through the Payback show, which was tonight in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the PPG Paints Arena. It was a listed sellout, had well over 12,000 people. They announced something on the broadcast, like 15 or so. And we started off with a steel cage match involving Trish Stratus and Becky Lynch. Tremendous video package that they had for the two, and promoting this as the end, the culmination of the rivalry. And Tiffany Stratton is shown once again in the crowd, which would pay off later with a segment backstage with Becky Lynch. And the bell rings and the two are staring off at one another. Becky then comes down, running Trish into the cage, and after a matrish, Becky leg drops her while she is bridging. And did you catch where this hematoma starts forming on Trish's forehead? Did you see what the blow was? Because I did not.
Feel like it might have been the repeated like ramming, like rams into the cage fence, because they were like pretty frequent and fast and aggressive. That's the only suggestion I would have.
It was swelling so quickly, and then it kind of subsided, but I thought we were going to have Mark Hominick here in this steel cage match because it was forming so quickly on her forehead. And this was early in the match. This was like 5 minutes in, and this swelling is just taking off. But then Trish manages a widow's peak, complete with the Victoria gesture by grabbing her hair. Very nice nod there to Lisa Marie Varon. And then Becky comes back with a twist of fate, tying in Lita, where this whole story began.
They were also talking about how Victoria and Lita specifically were the first women to have a cage match. That can't be right? Like,
I think they said Trish and Victoria had the first women's cage match. I think that's what they said.
Okay.
I don't recall a Lita Victoria cage match, but yeah, that was the tie-in they explained of the first women having a cage match in the company. They're fighting on top. The manhandle.
Lita and Victoria did have one.
Lita and Victoria did have a cage
2003 in November 24th.
Okay. The manhandle slam is stopped, and there's a top rope bulldog delivered to Becky. And then they're seated on the top of the cage. Becky stops Trish from climbing, and Trish is hung upside down from the cage with her legs in the top of the cage and manages to get up, and Becky hits a superplex. This thing was insane.
Oh my God.
Trish just gets her shoulder up, and the door opens.
Is like brave as hell for not only taking the superplex, but like the dangling off the cage spot. Oh my God. That looks so scary.
I watched that, and it was like, man, you could just tear your knee in no time here with that spot.
And if you somehow slipped out, like imagine, like, oh man, the fear of that fall would have had me.
So the door opens and Zoe Stark appears, and it's a tug of war as she's pulling on Trish to get her out. Becky pulls Trish back in, and then Zoe shuts the door on Becky's head. The big Christmas Eve 1982 world-class angle. This set up a near fall. And then she ducks the chick kick, manhandle slam, but Zoe is in to break up the cover. The crowd is pissed as the steel cage has not done its job. And Trish climbs, but the manhandle slam is delivered to Stark. Becky catches Trish climbing and hits a manhandle slam off the top turnbuckle to win the match in 20 minutes and 2 seconds. Michael Cole has filled out his ballot for match of the year as he proclaims this a candidate for excellent match between these two. And the feud certainly went long, but man, did they just kill it here in the main event. Sorry, the main event. This should have been the main event, but opened the show.
Felt very much like the main event. Coming into the show, there was no Roman Reigns match, no clear, direction for a main event. So you at least brought this up as, one of the matches in contention. It ended up being the opener, which I think is probably the second best spot to have on this match. But these two certainly wrestled this match and planned this match like it was a main event. It was excellent. I thought it completely exceeded my expectations early on, kind of standard, but like once they introduce some of these elements here, like, the callbacks to Victoria and Lita, similar to what Athena and Willow did to pay tribute to, some of their compatriots here. The entire match I thought had a very consistent feeling of a cat and mouse chase where Trish was constantly trying to escape as the heel should, and Becky doing everything she can to keep her inside. Some great battles on the top of the cage as well, including some like that giant superplex and then the manhandle slam. I thought the Zoe sort of like entrance into the cage initially was a little bit groan inducing, but ended up being a really good obstacle for Becky to finally overcome in order to lead to the finish. And this kind of, definitively ended their feud for you.
And complete with the ending here of the Zoe Stark-Trish relationship, where Stark is explaining herself to Trish, and Trish starts browbeating Stark and tells her to get out of the ring. And Zoe walks towards the door, but instead of leaving, she shuts the cage door, stands up to Trish, and nails her with the Z360, takes off her "Thank You Trish" shirt, and takes off. And I mean, I could read this as they're not even going to bother with the match here. This sort of felt like the write-off of Trish at the end, and Zoe getting standing up to Trish and nailing her with the move and ending this.
Felt like a write-off to me too, and if that's the case, man,
how do you assess this run?
So I think started off a bit rocky, and I would say overall a bit mixed, but she had some great moments throughout, and I thought she ended incredibly strong. And it's easy to forget this because, she looks the same as she did like from 25 years ago or 20 years ago, however long she's been. But she's 47 and she's doing these super flexes off of the cage.
She's remarkable.
Stepped out of her comfort zone greatly by being a heel for the first time in over 10 years and had a great 20-minute steel cage match here to close off a pay-per-view. I would say this is probably like
this was the high point of the return, this match for me.
Well, like, sure, absolutely. But like, can you like, how were the other Trish matches upon like, at Evolution or like just any of the other Trish matches since her comeback, or since her retirement, I should say? Like, this feels to me like it would be among the best, if not the best.
She had a really good match with Charlotte that year in Toronto at SummerSlam, but this was better. This was one of I think Trish's best matches. Period.
Yeah, and ended the run strong. If this is the end.
John Cena comes out, our host for the evening, and he puts over the previous match and lists all the things he's been in WWE, including a doctor and a prototype, which I don't think he was ever a prototype in WWE itself. I mean, shout out Rick Bassman.
OVW he was, I believe.
Yeah, is that WWE? I guess so.
Developmental.
They were helping. So he's never been a host, but he wanted to be a special referee for LA Knight and The Miz, which demanded a follow-up question of why. The Miz comes out and goes on about why he sucks being a host, and Miz is the greatest host of all time. And his advice to Cena is to not referee their match. And when you're offered to be a merman in the Barbie movie, turn it down. And that
was a great cameo.
It was very good. And he wore a $10,000 suit for his WrestleMania hosting gig while Cena dresses like a Teletubby, and you don't even have a referee shirt. And just like that, he was handed a referee shirt. We do a bunch of no, yeah, back and forth, and The Miz and LA Knight preceded this with John Cena as the special referee, which they did reveal on the kickoff show.
They revealed Cena being the special ref on the kickoff?
Yeah, they just put up a graphic, and he was listed as the referee.
Spoiler alert.
Well, Miz did come out here already with the knowledge, but I guess Cena had explained it. But yeah, it was kind of
gotcha.
Kind of odd that they revealed it on the kickoff show as opposed to just have it announced here. So Michael Cole, busy on Cage Match, reveals that Cena was a previous guest referee in 2010 for a match between Randy Orton and Wade Barrett.
Ah, yes.
Like, thank you, Michael. So Miz is killing time, which was the theme of this match. This crowd, they were just forcefully trying to get the yeah chant just over as much as they could here. Miz is in control. He's getting into Cena's face, and then Cena's enforcing the count on both men, and LA Knight's getting upset here. And at one point, Cena just looks at him and says, "You're not ready." And then Miz starts doing the M-I-Z. Yeah. And then he continues with the it kicks, which Michael Cole says, he stole those from somebody. And Cole then says, this is the pace of a match the Miz wants, taking the crowd out of it. And boy, Miz, like a maestro here, controlling this crowd that was dead. Knight then does his on offense. Skull crushing finale is stopped. We trade DDTs, and then Knight almost runs into Cena, but stops and gets hit with the skull crushing finale for a near fall. Miz teases the 5-knuckle shuffle, but Knight is up, slams him, elbow drop, BFT in 15 minutes and 46 seconds, which this should have been at most half of that. I thought this went way too long.
It did feel pretty long. I agree. I thought the match felt very un-2023. Like it felt like a WWE heavyweight style of match from like, I don't know, the mid 90s. You know, both these guys' movesets are very basic and really not at all spectacular, but they're both guys that get by with big personalities. And I felt like that was enough to get them like pretty like consistent to good reactions throughout the match. They, you know, cheered LA Knight throughout and they booed the Miz throughout. And overall, I thought they did a decent job with the Cena integration by, you know, just kind of constantly maybe teasing moments between the two of them. But overall, you know, just another sort of like several weeks to put LA Knight into the spotlight, ending with a bit of a Cena sort of like a passing of the torch moment, I guess.
Yeah, which, I mean, they just done this with Cena, with Cody, not all that long ago. And I understand, like, LA Knight is the hot guy, and Cena has a face-off with him at the entrance and then offers his hand. And man, was LA Knight reluctant to go along with this, and finally does. And Cena, you know, he endorses the guy, but it felt to me a little bit too much at this point.
Too much for who?
For LA Knight, that listen, he's the guy that they are pushing really hard, but I was very unimpressed with this match overall. I think it would have greatly benefited from a lot less time than going nearly 16 minutes for your second match in for these two. I could have told you that at the beginning. And I think they were expecting that this would be, if this was a match that was even, just a significant step up, I think the John Cena thing at the end would have meant a lot more than it did.
I think maybe like LA Knight being reluctant to shake Cena's hand might have been, to me, a way to make sure he didn't look like a subordinate to John Cena, you know, by maybe almost like teasing a feud between LA Knight and Cena. You kind of make LA Knight look a bit more like an equal and a potential rival, rather than just, you know, here's like, you know, sensei giving like his student a passing grade, you know, that sort of thing. But a feud like this was always going to, I think, have trouble with the final in-ring match, you know, and that's going to be a biggest hurdle, I would say, maybe for LA Knight. His promos are incredible, but is his in-ring up to the par that is expected of a main level professional wrestler?
It's not. I mean, it's not. And that's why, like, I do see a certain ceiling with him. And you know, there's this clamoring, get behind LA Knight. It was like, what does that mean, getting behind LA Knight? Because I don't know like how high you go with him. Like, I don't see him as your like, he could challenge for the title. I don't see this guy winning the title. Rey Mysterio,
not without big improvements, I guess, in ring.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, the personality side is through the roof, and I think it just means, you know, not putting him in 16 minutes with the Miz. I just don't think that's, you know, the best way to go about things. Rey Mysterio and Austin Theory for the U.S. Championship. A rarity here. Michael Cole shouts out by name members of the digital team for the stats that they provided. So look at that.
There you go. All right. So
Michael Cole was watching the G1 and it was like, oh, you can mention your people that do research for you. I mean, he's
got a whole team of Chris Samsas.
I'm sure he has a football team worth of them. So this is our match presented by Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And you could not look anywhere without seeing the imagery. So this match,
they must love Rey. Like,
Rey gets all the sponsorships. That's probably not by coincidence.
Specifically from Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Remember the Dominic match?
They love this guy. So so this match probably made them a lot of money, the company that is. And Ray comes out with the LWO in their Pittsburgh World Order shirts. I'm sorry, but the Pittsburgh World Order.
Well, they do this for every town.
I know they do, but my God,
but it's got even nothing to do with the LWO anymore. Like the Puerto Rico shirts made perfect sense when they're in Puerto Rico.
I hope that there's a future premium live event in Scarborough.
The Scarborough World Order. I'm sure somebody would already sell that somewhere. At this point, I mean, they're just the closest team that would wear one of those, I guess.
So this is also the first time Ray has worn this particular vest since Clash at the Castle 1 year ago when Dominic turned on him, and he has now crossed Dominic out of the vest.
Interesting. Okay.
That's harsh.
Ouch.
Theory was in control, and Graves asks if anyone has ascended to the top of WWE as quickly as Austin Theory. I'm like, has he now? And Michael Cole, without letting a second go by, Randy Orton. Theory then rips at the mask, and he is elbowed off, and Ray hits a moonsault, lands a tilt-a-whirl, and then Theory is sent out. Theory ducks a 619, and Theory takes him on the shoulders, spins him into a power bomb, and the 8-count down gets stopped. Ray connects with the 619, and after going for the splash, he lands on Austin's knees. Theory lifts him up for another attempt at the 8-count down, which Ray counters with a victory roll in 9 minutes and 49 seconds, and he celebrates with the LWO as Austin Theory is fuming. So much so that I'm worried that this is not over.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it is. You know, you have some Grayson Waller involvement. I thought we would get at least another sort of wrinkle in the Santos Ray thing. Nothing. No tease whatsoever.
They celebrated after, but there were no hints of anything.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, you can argue maybe Ray needs a successful defense of the U.S. title to really establish it, especially against the former champion. This kind of prolongs it. They might even be waiting at this point all the way until WrestleMania to do like a Ray versus Santos actual match. The match I didn't think was bad, but I kind of felt like it failed to stand out in any significant way. It felt like a pretty standard Ray performance, which is good. But I was more so maybe looking for something on the other end to make it feel that much more special. And Theory, unfortunately, looked about the same as he always does, which is not very.
No, this was it was a match that filled its time on the card in adequate fashion, which I don't know if anyone will be going home and saying, man, should have seen this Austin Theory match that I saw tonight at Payback. Kathy Kelly interviews Becky Lynch, who is approached by Tiffany Stratton. So a number of weeks ago, Tiffany Stratton did a promo on NXT stating, I'm going to be the greatest NXT women's champion of all time, bigger than Asuka, bigger than Charlotte Flair, and bigger than Becky Lynch. And then everyone got on her. Becky Lynch never won the title. So they're running with this, that she forgot that Becky was never the champion. So she brings this up stating, I'm sorry, I forgot you had never won the title. And Becky appreciates Tiffany coming out of her Mattel box and showing up here tonight, but you better focus on your match this Tuesday, and maybe I'll see you down the road. So it looks like we are going to have something involving Becky and Tiffany Stratton.
Long-term build for this, and I would say like on a PLE, it's kind of unusual that you would get this sort of NXT like backstage segment. So seemingly making a bigger deal out of this than maybe their usual NXT integrations.
Would you look at this as if you were going to do this match? Would you do it at the Battleground show at the end of this month, or would you put Tiffany on like the WWE show? Would that have a better, even if you're not calling up Tiffany, but just like what is more valuable?
Well, what's the purpose of doing all of this NXT integration? Is it not to bolster the sort of status of NXT as something that, you know, WWE viewers should be watching?
And for that reason, I'd put it on the more widely watched premium live event. I'd put it on do it on the Fastlane show. I mean, I think that would help Tiffany more. Like,
are you assured
unless you just want to pop a big number on TV and put Becky on NXT, like that might be. But if we're talking about premium live events, I mean, to me, it would be just do one cycle and put Tiffany on there. Like, they're obviously very, very high on her.
Have they not done? I mean, we saw a whole sort of like NXT, you know, Survivor Series, right? Like, and did that necessarily help drive viewers to NXT on that time? I mean, it was a long time ago, really, so maybe even hard to say now.
It is when NXT was its strongest on Tuesday nights, right at the beginning there.
Yeah. I mean, can't you argue that what they've been doing now has been working, you know, by putting WWE main roster members over to NXT?
It is, and I think it is helping like those specific weeks, but I don't know if it's necessarily sustained. And here, instead of sending your core audience from Monday to watch on Tuesday in a small fraction, take your smaller character and put her in front of your most eyeballs with the hope that people will come back and want to follow this story. And you have a month. You can do Tiffany on Raw one week. You can do Becky coming down to NXT for a segment and then pay it off at the pay-per-view.
I imagine you'll still probably get that, continued Tiffany Stratton interactions on the main roster, but I have a feeling they'll keep the match on NXT itself, but they could do either.
The Steel City Street Fight was next for the undisputed tag titles. Owens and Zayn against Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And the audience loved this, and there was plenty of integration here for the Pittsburgh crowd to get into things. Balor pulls out a terrible towel and then throws it down on the ground and stomps it. This upsets the crowd. And this put Graves in the position as the regular heel announcer that had to back Owens and Zayn, taking it out on Balor here as the Pittsburgh guy on the broadcast.
Graves was integral to this match.
Oh, absolutely, because it's not easy to decipher football teams from hockey teams. Owens and Zayn, we had trash cans galore. Owens takes off his t-shirt to reveal a Terry Funk shirt underneath. And man, that's not where the tributes would end for Kevin Owens, because this guy would end up bleeding a gusher later on. They put the trash can over Balor's head and beat it with kendo sticks. The kendo sticks have made just a roaring return after like one hardcore match without them in WWE.
They must have heard some of the complaints about the Terry Funk tribute match, because this was much more of a
this should have been the Terry Funk memorial match.
Correct. Yeah.
Table comes out for the giant pop, and Zayn then is throwing wild with chair shots here, and then they fight into the crowd where Dominic shows up, and together the three of them toss Zayn and Owens into the penalty box, and they are not seen. But when they stand up from the penalty box, they appear with Pittsburgh Penguins jerseys, where Kevin Owens is representing Mario Lemieux and Sami Zayn, Sidney Crosby, and they've got hockey sticks, and on top of it, Owens has been busted open, so he's just dripping blood on top of his face here.
I have no idea how he got busted open. I'm assuming maybe it was the shot from Dominic when he ran in with the elbow. But listen, if you're going to do a street fight and if you're going to wear a Terry Funk shirt, certainly made me a little bit suspicious about sort of whether or not this was an accident, but certainly added to the match, in my opinion.
I'm sure it was complete. Just they fell over the penalty boxes, and then they just had these jerseys just ready in their sizes. I'm sure this.
Oh, that was a total accident. I'm sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cole marvels that they're representing the 5-time Stanley Cup winners, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Graves is just like Penguins. So the gloves come off from Owens and Zayn. They attack Dominic. And then we return to first they fight by the kickoff show area, including Zayn doing a somersault senton off of this glass desk. And Dom is getting involved here. Owens then places Dom onto a table. He climbs on top of a balcony and delivers a swan dive off the balcony and almost overshoots Dominic. This was a really bad landing for Kevin Owens. And he looked like his back took a great deal of this, if not his tailbone, because the table still managed to break. So he at least caught enough of him. But dude, from the neck down, it was pretty much past Dom's body. This looks scary as hell.
Yeah, I'm not a wrestler. I've never done a swanton off a balcony. I imagine maybe partially that a lot of this was positions for him to protect Dominic, of course, rather than him taking the full weight. But that also meant Owens had to basically take this bump on his tailbone coming off the balcony, which is insane. So, it looks spectacular,
Dude, this is probably going to hurt like hell. But I'll tell you what's going to mitigate some of that pain is when Kevin Owens sees the replay from this angle that they shot from underneath of him rotating off the balcony. Yeah, this was right underneath him. And the way he rotates, this was the greatest highlight of Kevin Owens' career. This shot was immaculate. And if you're going to destroy your back, you want to have an angle to watch back and tell people this is how I messed up my back.
If you're going to do a balcony dive, make sure at least 5 cameras are present.
That's it. 4K the hell out of it. So this was probably the most dangerous spot on the entire show. Zayn and Balor are making their way to the ring. You'd think like this would eliminate Owens from the match, but he's back within minutes after this for the end stretch. And Balor and Priest are working together. Owens returns, stuns Damian Priest, and they set him up for the haluva kick. You think it's over. JD McDonough yanks Zayn out for the save. And then Owens takes McDonough and pop-up power bombs this dude onto the edge of the desk that doesn't break, and Graves, with the most accurate call of his career, he's dead. And dude, this guy looked like he broke in half. That was not hyperbole. He took this power bomb. He might have been in just as much pain as Kevin Owens, but it wasn't as pretty of an angle. And Rhea then appears, spearing Kevin Owens through a barricade. Like, this guy just went all out in terms of damage he took in this match. Balor misses the coup de grace onto Zayn, hits the exploder and haluva kick, but Dominic nails Sami Zayn with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and Balor climbs on top, pinning Sami Zayn in 20 minutes and 43 seconds. We get the title change. Hell of a street fight.
Oh, excellent match. Yeah. They took this thing everywhere, you know, and I think they gave us an intensity and chaos worthy of a Terry Funk tribute. Owens, you know, the blood, I thought, greatly added maybe to the atmosphere, whether intentional or not. And then you had that crazy swanton off the balcony. I love the hockey moments, as hokey as, you know, maybe they may be. I think you need this level of fun, especially when you're trying to theme it a Pittsburgh Steel City street fight. You know, this was the most Pittsburgh thing I think you had, really the only Pittsburgh thing you had in the actual match itself, because what else about it was, you know, Steel City? Chairs? Do they not have that elsewhere? Whatever. I love those moments, and I love the use of the Judgment Day throughout this, you know. Yes, like a lot of people might groan at these sort of constant run-ins, as I usually do when we talk about like the House of Torture in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But unlike the House of Torture, I thought every run in here from the Judgment Day members felt memorable, and each one felt like a significant obstacle for each of the baby faces to overcome. I thought they found a great role for JD McDonough to continue, you know, his sort of story as like a guy who's trying to win Damian Priest over to join the Judgment Day. And then everybody else I thought played a very significant role, including Rhea, of course. So I thought this match was great.
I thought it was interesting, the fact that this was like significant, like female on male, like violence with the big spot of the spear.
You've had that plenty though. Like Rhea attacked
Rhea,
everybody.
though. Like Rhea has, and not so much in this whole program involving Owens and Zayn, and it ties into like Rhea. If, like, I will do things myself if I have to, and I'm really curious if this is an option for War Games, where Rhea is part of the men's War Games match.
Okay, so the only problem is that they allow female on male violence, but not the other way around. So it's one thing to have a spot or two, but can you work an entire match without Rhea getting hit?
It depends on what they're comfortable doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like the audience might be like dissatisfied by it, because I don't think you'll get much of a back and forth. You got JD is in there as well now, right? I guess so. What would that make it? 1, 2, 3. I guess that would only make it 4 on 4, which they've done, right?
Because the way it's set up now, like, it seems as though like a Bloodline War Games, like you would have to add a lot of people now, and you've separated the Usos, which we'll get to, and like I don't think it would
be the Bloodline.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the Judgment Day kind of makes sense to be, and maybe JD is that guy, but the fact that Rhea is so attached, I'm just curious if that's maybe a thought.
Baby faces could also add a female as well.
That's true. You could do that on top of it. Grayson Waller effect is next, and he asks what Cody's big announcement is. And after Cody has had so many ups and so many downs this year, and calls Cody kid, and Cody, a dynamite throwback here, noting that Grayson is one of the latest graduates of hip toss class, which was, brought me right back to a different Cody that was not riding this wave of success.
Who did he say that about?
Oh, it was like when Fish and O'Reilly came in, I think.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it was all the NXT crew coming in, hip toss class, and lists off all the different interview shows over the years, his favorite being Flair for the Gold, and how these segments usually go. But Cody's going to give him a big scoop. He says SmackDown is intriguing, and he saw a wrong that needs to be righted. And he reveals his big announcement: Jey Uso is now part of the Raw roster. And Jey comes out, and Michael Cole reminds us he didn't just quit SmackDown, he quit the WWE. Now he has unquit the WWE, but he has still quit SmackDown. So he has joined Raw, and Grayson tells everyone to relax. He's only been gone for 2 weeks and says Jay has failed as a singles performer. All he's done is be a twin in a tag team. So Jay super kicks him. And that led to Grayson Waller posting a photo where he was icing his jaw with a Pepsi can, stating that he was hit unprovoked on his show. Fire that man. So pretty clever line from Grayson Waller. Hopefully,
and he does not work in the same company as the person he's referencing.
Not right now. But if he does,
you're right.
This tweet will be remembered. I promise you. So yeah, Jay is on Raw. So in essence, you would think like they are trying to actively keep the Usos separate until they're ready to do that match. And now you have a reason for it. But I think you do kind of need a rationale for Jay leaving, quitting the company, but now he's coming back to Raw.
Yeah, I guess,
and you do get him and Sammy now back on the same show as well.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, although Sammy and KO were, Sammy will now be Raw exclusive because he dropped the championship.
That's right. That's right.
So that'll be interesting.
Need them on SmackDown some week.
Yeah, and then maybe you get continued interaction with like Jay and Kevin Owens, and now you kind of do the thing where like Sammy is torn between the two. So that'll be really interesting. By the way, Jey Uso came out to a remix version of his theme as well. Now it's just his voice and his brother's out of it, and so they're really
the whole arena doing his arm deal.
This thing, yeah. That's his new thing
with both arms.
Okay, you want to do it together, one arm each?
No, I don't. I just want your thoughts on the segment.
I mean, they're really making a real push for both of these two as single stars with their own singles programs. The level at which they'll push them, we'll see. Are we truly going to see a main event Jey Uso, or are we going to see an IC title level Jey Uso, you think?
Well, it's on Raw. I think it's another person you have in the mix here on Raw. Like, you do have a really interesting set of potential main event. Like, you have a lot of programs for Seth Rollins.
I love the idea of just like Jay being able to continue something with Sami Zayn. There was always magic, I think, in their specific pairing, and to be able to throw a bit of that bloodline magic over to Raw, I think it helps Zayn and Owens, who have probably needed something for a long, long time.
And you have all these people from Roman's past, from Owens and Zayn to Drew McIntyre to Seth Rollins, and now Jay. It's like, you were part of this guy's group for all this time, and he has all this history now with these guys that Roman plowed through.
He's Vegeta.
I was Kazuyuki, yeah.
And maybe there's a war games there already, like between Owens, Zayn, Cody, Jay. I mean, Cody was the one to talk Jay into coming back from retirement. So
yeah, you definitely have the line of baby faces to go against Judgment Day as the war games match. Rhea Ripley against Raquel Rodriguez for the Women's World Championship. So they work this as kind of, here are the two powerhouses of the women's division, with Raquel working with the bad knee that she was recently cleared for. And they were kind of doing like, both of them were each other's equal. And the audience definitely came down for this match. I think this was another one that went longer than it was needing to. And it kind of felt like a bit of a dated style for what this audience wanted to see. And you're coming off a hot street fight, and you're coming back with this, where it's just a lot of like outpowering the other, and the irresistible force against the immovable object.
Well, they're both irresistible forces almost, like I almost wondered, because there's a portion here where Rhea's nose got busted open. She was bleeding, seemed at least, distracted by it throughout the match. I wonder if that might have affected like her pace at all, like if it affected her breathing at all, because this was a lot slower than I think we were expecting, even for, two powerhouses.
After she stopped the Tejana bomb, Raquel lifted her for a power bomb, and she like totally lost her and fell backwards with Rhea, which Michael Cole, I mean, Rhea shifting her weight. It's like, man, I mean, it did sell the knee injury, because it looked like someone like that, their knee just gave out.
What you should do it as an announcer is to protect, right?
Yep. Raquel comes down off the turnbuckle and tweaks her knee. So Rhea chop blocks it, applies the prism lock, but then Raquel cradles her to get out. And then Raquel power bombs her into the post, dumps her into the barricade, and then runs the shoulder into the post. Dominic comes down, which kind of felt like we were going back to the well here after we had just seen this. And Raquel pulls both into the ring. Dominic is scared and gets hit with a power slam, which allows Rhea to kick the knee, hits the head and riptide, 17 minutes and 22 seconds. I can't say that this one hit at the level I thought they had the potential of doing, because they had some very good matches in NXT together, and they've been wrestling each other for like 5 years when you go back to when both came into the NXT system. But I just think the way this was laid out, I think it was a tough match this late in the show, and certainly too long for what they needed.
Yeah, some of the length of the matches on the show, especially considering the overall runtime of this card.
This was 3.5 hours for 6 matches.
Yeah. I
That's too
definitely
much.
think could have been shaved down. But I was disappointed in this match as well. Again, not sure if something happened with like her nose to really affect anything, but overall, it really lacked intensity and felt pretty flat, just in terms of like, you know, who had the advantage, who wasn't. You never really got those big moments of like concern, or at least just even excitement, you know. And then the ending I thought was pretty predictable and generic, you know, with Dom's running.
Which you had just done in the last one. Like this guy had taken a
Done better.
swanton through a table, and he's coming back 30 minutes later for a spot, and he's fine.
Oh yeah,
He was selling it on the way back, but
Owens cut a miss, so maybe that was it.
Okay, maybe that was his out. John Cena's dressed up in a suit and a bow tie, and it's the return of Lance Catamaran as he interviews Finn Balor and Damian Priest. And Priest and Balor, like, they do this interview straight, as this guy is just being a total goof here, and they state their family, brothers fight, but we're on the same page, we're unbeatable. And Cena's just acting all nervous. Cena stole the scene here, and these guys just felt like they were just the props here for Cena. And then he throws back to Cole and Graves.
They were doing some impressive camera tricks here, where I'm guessing Cena was doing like the split-legged thing to look.
Definitely, yeah, because he was getting towered over by these two.
And Balor must
at least by Priest. Balor is not exactly.
Balor was taller than Cena in this scene, so Balor must have been standing very close to the lens, because they made Balor look like a giant here.
Maybe Cena was doing the splits. Full splits.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he was doing the splits and then some. Whatever they were doing here, they somehow made John Cena look tiny in comparison to Finn Balor. I had mixed reactions, I should say, to John Cena's humor throughout the show. This was very much.
Dude, John Cena's, like, his humor has been it's been more missed than his funniest stuff is outside WWE.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, he's got genuinely great, like, funny comedic timing. In WWE, like, this is not like this is just a mid-40-year-old trying to, like, he was always like this corny.
He's funniest when other people are writing for him, because I mean, I don't know if he wrote this himself or not, but this was I didn't think he was all that funny throughout the show.
I didn't care that much. It was just like John Cena did kind of feel like forced onto this show, but I mean, if the guy's available, you write him into some segments. But
was this the best usage of him? Like,
no, not at all. Like, I personally didn't think he was all that effective in the referee match. I think he kind of overshadowed them in the match, to be honest. No, this was not the greatest use of John Cena, but they had him, and this is what they had in mind.
I'd argue, like, you want to still do things to protect his star power, and even though he was poking fun at himself here doing this sort of backstage thing, ultimately it kind of leaves me feeling apathetic to John Cena appearances on, like, 2 days after the guys just returned.
Well, the main event was Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura, Shin, for the World Heavyweight Championship, and Keiji Muto is brought out to sit in the front row. Man flew all the way from Japan for this match, so I'm glad he got a front row seat for his troubles.
Maybe he was at Starrcade.
At Starrcast?
Oh, sorry, Starrcast, yeah.
Imagine if Kawada came to take this match in. He's probably going all out tomorrow night, I bet.
Yes.
He should be in the crowd there. They should try and get Kawada at All Out tomorrow night.
That would be amazing.
That'd be very cool.
He should come out, like, he should be there for the Kingston match. He should come out with Eddie Kingston. Come on.
They should let him come out, do his entrance, and be selling Kawada ramen at the concession stand.
Amazing.
We had this awesome entrance for Shinsuke Nakamura. Let me say, what they have done with Shinsuke Nakamura, honestly, like, it's among, like, the best stuff of this year from WWE. Am I overselling it? I think they have just done such a great job. And this entrance, they did this whole animated video, like total comic book style, with Shinsuke's entrance.
Anime or manga, like,
Well, he comes out and it's all using the promo about the back. And it's his duty to put Seth out of his misery and remove his burden of being champion. This is the beginning of your end.
Great. They released this online. Neil Flanagan actually sent it to me, and I was like, "Why did they put this on TV?" And clearly, they were just saving it for the entrance, and putting it early out for the audience. It was fantastic, and one of the things I was hoping to come out of this was like a renewed direction for Nakamura, and coming off of the result of this match, I'm curious to know what they do with him. If they can continue this in any way, or if he just kind of steps again back into the mid card after. But they really found something unique.
Yeah, it's like this is a main event act, but I feel it's so late in the game for Nakamura that I really wish this was something like they honed in on like 6-7 years ago. But alas. Rollins was wearing like pinstripes in honor of Bray Wyatt. They noted about his gear, but the announcers did a phenomenal job because everything was about Seth Rollins' back. And to me, it is a bit of a leap where we go from among the most athletic performers in the whole company, if not industry, and now he's a blow away from being a paraplegic.
I totally agree. And like
one bad shot and he's paralyzed. I was like, where have we gone from this guy that was like, it's real. Like, this is a real back injury, and they did the right thing with the commentary, and it made for a dramatic story. But it's a big leap of Seth Rollins, and this is not to me like I'm watching Shawn Michaels in his comeback match.
Agreed. Yeah, because just weeks ago, you've seen this guy have picture perfect like performances, like where I'm sure he's landed on his back several times and has not had the same reaction. So what I think they needed to do was either in the lead up to this or within the body of the match itself, they needed a significant injury to the back that to an extent that you wouldn't have seen in his other matches to justify why the back is suddenly such a sensitive area for this particular match. I think it might have been a missed opportunity, like even in the go home segment for Nakamura I know he did the Kinshasa to the back, but I think they could have gone a step further. He could have done some sort of weapons thing or some sort of like crazy like thing you just haven't seen before. In this match, I thought they attempted it, but Rollins kind of began his like sensitive back selling even before you had that big table spot. So I also found it a bit inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, in another era, it would have been so hokey now, but the idea of Keiji Muto blowing mist at his spine would have been priceless.
I don't think mist works like that, dude.
Keiji Muto, the black mist on the spine.
It's mist.
Dude, this is all the stuff we just saw with Asuka. Like, literally, they've done this.
I thought mist was only effective in eyes, like when it gets in your eyes. Is it bad on the skin as well?
You need to watch some of the old hustle angles that they did with mist. I mean, it was like there were crazy things.
I know you could get pregnant through the mist in hustle. I don't know if it.
I don't think he'd get Seth Rollins pregnant, but it could affect his lower lumbar.
Like, if anything, mist on your back would just give you a bad rash, right? It wouldn't affect your spinal column, I don't think.
Depends what's in the mist. So the announcers focus on the back, and Nakamura's going after it. Nakamura's in control, and Rollins hits a top rope Frankensteiner. And the award for like mental gymnastics was Corey Graves, who explained he was going to go for a superplex, but needed to preserve his back. So he did a top rope Hurricane Rana. And Michael Cole's like, yeah, dude, that's still gonna really take a lot out of your back. Not as much though. It's not as bad as a superplex. It's like, okay. Graves is trying really hard here, but it's like you're watching this guy. He's doing like a picture perfect frog splash, and that's always been the thing with me with Rollins when he's got a heavy duty injury to sell. He's still going to do his big moves, and they're breathtaking.
Well, the guy did a kip up here, and like I understand, like I
think sometimes he's got to cut stuff out, and I don't think he's a big cutter outer.
Yeah, I understand. Like, okay, like you got to do the frog splash as part of your move set. Maybe you even have to do a Hurricane Rana, but a kip up is not like it doesn't need to be in your match. And the guy did it and didn't even really sell. The announcers had to kind of cover for him. He said, "Oh, did you notice Seth Rollins instinctively put his hand by his back once a little bit after that kip up?" I mean, yeah, that I think is definitely an area I also agreed with.
Rollins then lands a beautiful frog splash. Nakamura kicks out, and then we get dialogue, Seth. And he says, "I know my back is thrashed. I know the risk I take, but you don't have to make my family worry. You don't have to bring them into this. I know the risk I'm taking."
So clearly, like, the pandemic still has some remnants. It's not over, everybody, because dialogue in the body of matches is still very much a thing that I think is encouraged right now in at least WWE style professional wrestling, and it works most of the time. And I think it's nice for to at least hear from the wrestlers themselves exactly what we're supposed to be focused on.
Yeah, we're basically to believe that his back is destroyed, but we don't have to tell my family that, okay? They can just watch along like fans at home, and if I take a bag hit, they'll be surprised like everybody else. We can keep them out of this. They don't need to know the state of my Nakamura. Nakamura is aware of his health history, but Becky would not be. Becky missed that interview with Logan Paul. She thinks his back is fine. So
well, yeah, whatever. Yes.
Nakamura, I actually really like this spot where he goes for the Kinshasa. It's stopped with a super kick, but then Nakamura rolls for the armbar and changes to a triangle. And Rollins tries to deadlift him, but he can't. He can't deadlift him up because of the back, and he collapses. I thought this was a really convincing submission tease, but then he postures and finally slams him out. Then they battle on the turnbuckle. Nakamura hits a landslide off the turnbuckle for a near fall. Rollins is screaming in pain. Then they're showing the replay right as Nakamura hits a Kinshasa. Then goes for another, but Rollins can't get up. He's collapsed. So out of nowhere, he lands a pedigree, but can't go for the cover. The stomp gets avoided. Nakamura goes for the cover, and Rollins rolls out and hits the stomp. Rolls on top of Nakamura in 25 minutes and 57 seconds, retaining the title. And Nakamura is pissed. He's pacing around the ring afterward. Certainly gave you the sense that this one might be followed up on. And yeah, we'll see. Like it's not like it's a big show. The next pay-per-view they have, it would not shock me if they continued this, but they did go with the pinfall ending, so they could also wrap this one up. But what did you think of the match?
Yeah. So by the way, Nakamura did attack Rollins after Payback. So as Rollins was making his way to the back,
it looked like they were going to do something because he was just pacing, and I almost thought we were going to get the Paul Levesque, the credits come up, and then he goes for him, but they went off the air before he attacked them.
And you know what? That's kind of encouraging. I mean, clearly, whether or not that was the plan, they saw enough life in this Shinsuke Nakamura character for them to build to a rematch. And the possibility of a title change, I think, still very much exists. So I'm curious to see how they evolve and continue to build on this very winning formula for Shinsuke
Muto
Nakamura.
versus Rollins.
Probably
not.
Yeah, Muto versus Rollins. I'm curious. Maybe was Keiji Muto here for a reason? Was he here having meetings in the back? Do we see?
I don't think he was doing stuff. I think he came for this. I don't know what else they would have been talking with him about.
Can he pass on the gimmick to Shinsuke Nakamura?
I don't.
The great Mura.
Nakamura doesn't need the. Yeah, he's doing fine. He's doing great. These last 4 weeks have been the best 4 weeks of his WWE career.
You're right.
Let's not mess with it.
I thought it was.
I like the match overall. I put in my issues I had at different points of it. Mm-hmm. You could argue this late in the show, 26 minutes with Nakamura in this stage, but man, I think the handling of Nakamura has been excellent. I really love the intro, and they had a story for this match. So it kind of comes down to how much you were into the story here and trying to convince you of Nakamura being a threat to this championship. But not my match of the show, but I would probably put it third. I'd put this behind the cage match and the street fight.
Yes,
a comfortable third out of 6.
Yeah, and I think depending on what your expectations were heading into this, that might be a little disappointing. When you see it's a Seth Rollins main event with the Shinsuke Nakamura that feels like the hottest he's been since he's been on the main roster. I certainly had higher expectations, I think, and I agree it was a good match overall. I thought they did a good job with the backstory, but I'm a little disappointed that I didn't think that there was any significant moment in the match where I actually felt like Nakamura was about to win. And with a build this good, I actually consider that a little bit of a disappointment because I thought the title change was very much in play. So the fact that we didn't really get a big false finish throughout this, a little bit disappointing to me. I have seen better matches from both men. I've seen better matches worked around the back. Again, very good, but maybe I just had a slightly higher expectation. So hopefully they can answer that in what looks to be a rematch between the two.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by that, of how you come back with this. You would assume at the Fastlane show that they have coming up next, but that was Payback. It was a long show. I I do feel again, 3.5 hours and 6 matches, like that works out to like over 30 minutes per match that you have blocked out, which is insane.
As we talk about all out tomorrow, which will definitely not be a 3, will be.
Do you know at that rate, if each match was given 30 minutes or so, we would be having a 7.5 hour show tomorrow night. Which thankfully we're not.
Yeah.
Do you want to quickly go through the card here before we sign off? So
we have some feedback.
Do we have feedback? Okay.
We have some, at least we have a super chat. Actually, we have 2 super chats here. One of which, apologies everybody. This show got, we had some technical issues. So this show is split into 2 parts, but we had a super chat earlier from Ryan G, who sent $15. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for the continued great coverage and insight into all things pro wrestling. Likely unlikely Punk is brought into Survivor Series later this year in Chicago.
I'll say unlikely on that one.
Yeah, I mean, certainly audiences might be chanting his name that particular evening, but we don't know anything about the status of a non-compete. I'm also going to say unlikely at this point. Okay. We got another super chat here. It comes to us from this one I can actually bring up. Nice Salmons, who sends $5 to say, "Look in my eyes. What do you see? Fired from the company. So much anger killing your dreams. I've insulted everyone on TV. Oh, fired from the company." Yes. Okay. I mean, I don't like, I'm reading it because it's a super chat, but it also kind of feels shitty to make fun of somebody for, getting fired. This is a shitty situation all around. It's shitty for everybody involved. It's shitty for AEW. It's shitty for, professional wrestling. So
when you look back at what he meant when he came in, and that year that I don't think is going to be forgotten. Like, it was, there were things brewing and such, but it was a great year that he had in front of the camera, and reignited his interest in professional wrestling and made a meaningful difference to an upstart company. And that this should have been a tremendous comeback story for CM Punk and a second half of his career after all those years away from professional wrestling. And it's probably like this AEW chapter, I do think it's probably going to be soured by this last year. And what the future holds, I mean, that is ultimately going to be, it's not even in his court necessarily. It's going to be many, many factors, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because it remains to be seen.
And just to note, everybody, I dropped the call-in link into the YouTube chat room right now because, of course, we had to start a new stream for the second portion. That means the old link is inactive. So if you're watching this right now live, look in the YouTube chat room for today's call-in link. And let's start things off here with our feedback from Andy B. Hey, Andy, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hi, Andy.
So, guys, I think there's a little bit of bad management at play here with Tony Khan, and I'm one of the biggest CM Punk fans in the world. However, if you are creating a bad working environment for everybody at that company, I can't defend you anymore. Right? Like, you've made the right call. It's best for all parties to move on. And like you guys said, I'm sure it will sting in the short term, but I have enough faith in AEW's creative that they'll eventually find a way to make things work. And I have more respect for Tony Khan for taking a stand at a time when he potentially has contract renewals coming up. So that was something I wanted to touch on.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I completely feel like there's several people to blame, and Tony Khan, I think, deserves a lot of it. A lot of the situation is his creation. You can argue most of it is part of his creation. So, and that's why I think he wanted to go out there and take responsibility tonight so that he, can justifiably be the person that the audience can get angry at. And he deserves a lot of it. Yeah.
And guys, on a payback note, I just wanted to ask you guys about Rhea Ripley, because every week on Raw, I think she's one of the more compelling parts of television, because I think the Judgment Day storyline has been pretty consistently entertaining. But I think it's very difficult to put her in matches because she's kind of like the prime Golden State Warriors, whereas she is the dominant force, but like the fans want to see her win. So I'm not sure how exactly you go about booking an opponent for her, because if you book somebody who's an underdog to Rhea Ripley, like the fans aren't getting behind the underdog because they want to see Rhea Ripley beat them up.
It's going to be a huge challenge, all the way until you have somebody like a Becky Lynch, who I think they're saving her for, for a WrestleMania. You saw somebody like a Zelina, be able to, I think, make a great match out of her run because she had the hometown sort of crowd behind her. They could probably find similar ways. And beyond that, they'll have to do a better job, building up their baby faces for sure.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you, Andy. Let's go up next to Rohan. Hi, Rohan. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
Good.
Hey.
Yeah, so I'm joining from India, and I just woke up to the whole CM Punk thing.
Oh, what happened?
The thing that he got fired and everything, and it was a big news like on Twitter. But
really?
So what's happening is that in India, maybe people watch Dynamite mostly because of Punk, and now Collision mostly because of Punk, because Punk joining was a very big thing, because that is somewhere of a main relatable star. And as far as like Daniel Bryan and Moxley are concerned, they've not been positioned that well as of in the past, right now, in the recent past. So maybe that will hurt the international market for AEW, I think, being that CM Punk is gone.
Oh, it'll hurt markets everywhere, I'm sure, Rohan, But clearly this was like something that they were considering and that they were willing to part with. So
yeah, I know. I mean, the whole situation, if you think of it, that these are like 40-year-old men, they are fighting over these things. All of this could have been avoidable. Even going back to the last year when All Out, I think a physical brawl could have been avoided. What happened at that press conference could have been avoided. It's just about keeping you calm, but I don't think Punk's good at that. And do you think there's a future with WWE as far as Punk is concerned?
It has to be an option, but it comes down to ultimately if the company wants to engage, and if Punk is continuing, like does he want to go back with WWE? It was a very unceremonious exit for him. Like mentally, does he want to go back? He's in a position he doesn't need to do any of that. So it's going to come down to both sides, and I would think that if CM Punk is going to wrestle again, that's probably your only option, unless he just wants to do it for the pure love of doing a match at a greatly reduced rate from what he has been earning these number of years.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a chance. And I also feel like WWE, despite history, and I think that was a long time ago, and I think a lot's happened since. He had the Fox gig. We hear he went to backstage to chat with friends. I wouldn't be surprised if people in the WWE felt like they'd be able to control CM Punk and have him on a certain leash that AEW wasn't able to have. And whether or not they're right about that, I don't know. We'll see. But I could at least see them taking that risk because they have a very different system. So,
but I think it's ironic that Punk, the summer of Punk in 2011, when he was complaining about everything is so scripted and the people don't have much creative control, and that's what has bit him in the ass right now in AEW. That people have too much creative control. They went for business for themselves, and that kind of really what stirred the pot everywhere. Like something that he complained about, like the Bucks were leaking information to the media. I don't think that happens ever in the WWE, because see, WWE also I think has a backstage and it would have people and there would be disagreements, but it's not too public. It's never too public. But AEW has a constant habit of leaking things, and all of this politicking backstage is making news. So like maybe they should also have a control on what goes out to the media and the dirt sheets.
Thank you, Rohan. Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's as cut and dry as that, but nonetheless, let's continue on here.
We have a super chat here from DJ Depression, who sends $5 to say the fault for this situation is on TK. There was drama before Punk releases without telling people Thunder Rosa, and there will be drama to come.
I mean, there's people that are going to assess the situation however they want, but at this point, like, what more can you do other than that's all in the past at this point? All you can do is operate from what is the best course of action moving forward, and they felt this was the best course of action to, if you can't fix the problem, remove the problem.
Let's go up next to Jake Hollinar, who I believe was at Collision tonight. Hey, Jake.
Hey guys, I just arrived home from the arena after a very surreal live experience that I'd never thought. I don't think I've ever been a part of before. Especially being on the floor during the whole thing, and I was literally coming out of a panel show from Jeff Jarrett and Conrad Thompson when I first saw the tweet, and then I having a little bit of a conversation with, ironically, the Brock Lesnar guy, Michael, who I'm just talking a little bit with, and then we both found out at the same time. And so that's when
What did Brock Lesnar guy think of all this?
I mean, he was pretty upset too, and he also noted that some blame should be given to Jack Perry as well, which I don't disagree with at times because he has his faults as well, but. But we were both like pretty shocked, not surprised, but we all saw this coming. But yeah, I mean, especially going to the event and seeing Tony Khan coming out there, possibly in his most vulnerable that I've ever seen. But the thing is that I'm really happy that he decided to do this. I mean, yes, I wish he could have at least like done a better job last year as far as like being more transparent, but I really do appreciate he decided to take a few minutes before the show to at least have some honesty with the audience. And not every one of us booed, which is kind of a little bit of a pleasant surprise for me. You know, there's a couple of people behind me, several people behind me, even clapping and applauding about what he's done, and especially at the end of his speech, definitely got end on a lighter note as far as the audience was concerned too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other interesting notes that you think we should know about from?
I'll definitely say that even though that the crowd was definitely in a more like conflicting and bit of a rough spot, I'll definitely say, spoiler alert, Danielson coming back to finally to have that match with Ricky Starks tomorrow definitely lifted our spirits up, which is pretty cool. And I'm really happy that with this crowd, it wasn't a full hijacking, which I knew it wasn't going to be, but comparing to that Raw when Paul Heyman came out and it was a full hijack with Punk chants all show long. I'm really happy that this crowd is more understanding, and with the amount of great talent in wrestling, kind of like just ignore and then decided to move on with that type of attitude right there. So yeah. Basically my little bit of a recap right there.
Are you expecting many moments of Punk hijacking, or at least seeing Punk chants throughout tomorrow? And if so, what moments of the show would you expect that?
I don't really expect it that much. Maybe a couple of dueling chants with, especially in my section tonight, there was a couple of dueling chants with Colt Cabana and CM Punk, which is a little bit of amusing, and to be honest with you, but maybe probably not too much, which I'm really pleased about. So, but yeah, that's basically all I got to hear. And thank goodness I'm got to take a little bit of some rest because I'm going to see a Kawada tomorrow morning at Starcast. So that's going to be pretty fun as well.
Thanks, Jake.
We'll enjoy that. Thank you so much, Jake. Appreciate the call.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. We have 3 more calls here, and I'm going to request everybody to maybe be a bit more brief with their thoughts, because we will be back tomorrow night, of course, and this is already a bit of a longer show. So let's start things off here with Brian. Hey, Brian.
Good evening, guys. Yeah, I was able to catch the last hour of Payback after Collision ended, and as soon as I switched over to Peacock, there was Cody, and thought the Jey Uso announcement was pretty big, and I thought the main event was a good match, and I'll go back tomorrow morning to watch the cage match and most likely the street fight, and and the Punk news, that just had to be done at this point. I mean, when just everything that's happened, it just had to be done. So I think this company will persevere through that. I mean, hard to gauge business, but who knows? But Danielson coming in once again to fill a spot once Punk leaves the company was quite something. So,
and his timetable worked out almost exactly what he guessed that night at the press conference after Forbidden Door.
How is a Bone able to heal like that quickly? That's really amazing, honestly. Like that he's able to make this comeback and do a strap match, no less. So obviously he wasn't supposed to be on the show, I would think, right?
No,
so
obviously not.
Are they just going to work around it, or what, but
I mean, they said he was cleared.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Yeah.
you're just talking about John Cena coming back so soon at the 2008 Royal Rumble too. So bit of the mirror there. Okay. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Brian. You know, the rating for Collision tonight, I think, will be really interesting, right? You know, because it's going up against Payback, but I certainly had more interest in what was going on in Collision, coming off of everything with CM Punk. So I'm very curious.
I would say if it maintains, like last week they did a 0.16 and going against a WWE show, it's still going to hurt. But yeah, there was definitely, I think, like this is, you know, that coming out, that news so close to Collision. Yeah, there will probably be a lot of like heightened interest. Punk is going to draw them one more number on the way out.
All right, let's go quickly to Muggin. Hey, what's up?
Purple Rain. Judgment Day is dripping in gold right now. But I think it's yeah. But I think it's going to be a temporary thing because, you know, Priest is still money that is still holding the briefcase. And I think that's going to be the end of them at some point. The street fight was crazy as shit. And man, Kevin Owens was the MVP in that match. And it took, like, I mean, of course, you know, it had the usual Judgment Day fuckery, but I mean, it was.
But it helped the match.
It did. It definitely did. And yeah, it's cool that all Judgment Day is holding the gold. And more on Dominic in a second. Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus bodied it in that cage match. It was. I wasn't too hot about the feud, but man, like they ended it on a high note, and it dovetails nicely because, you know, Becky Lynch is finally going to segue into a program with Tiffany Stratton. And that's definitely a match that they're going to do for No Mercy, you know, because I think that they're going to set that up on Tuesday. And between that and Dominic Mysterio and Bakersfield, I think that those are two surefire matches to fill up Bakersfield in No Mercy. And so, and you know, and I think Dominic needs to, like, you know, lose the North American Championship because he's, you know, NXT can't go on with one less title right now. And overall, I mean, Payback delivered better in execution than on paper, because on paper it didn't really look that good. Didn't really look as appealing as, like, you know, the bigger, you know, B-level shows like Backlash or whatever. But I mean, this was definitely a thumbs up show, you know, despite that.
Seems to be usually the case, you know, if it was like with shows coming off of lackluster build. So.
Yeah, and Nakamura looked the best he's looked in forever. I mean, that anime intro was just so good. It was so good.
It was great. Thank you so much, Morgan. Appreciate the call.
All right.
Let's go finally to Hansi. Hey, Hansi.
I was gonna do a whole bit where I had your logo in the background and like breaking news from the Post Wrestling Control Center, but it was too bright. I was like, you know, it's too late for this kind of stuff. But no, I didn't get to watch Collision yet. But no, a Payback I did enjoy, but I can't lie. I was looking to see CM Punk news. I know. I try to get away from this. I hate myself for even diving in. Like every day, it's something about CM Punk. It's like, dude, it's like I'm forced to hear this now because it's like always hearing about Donald Trump and shit. I just don't want to hear about this guy for like a bit. At least like nothing controversial. But holy crap, man! It's too much for me in this era of like constant, like, you know, politicians doing whatever crazy thing to like get news. You know what I mean? But I thought the show itself was pretty decent. I like the main event. I'm with you guys. Like sometimes when they do some of this stuff with Seth doing injury angles, he still does moves that I go, it's kind of like it's hard to suspend your disbelief that his back is injured, but he's doing all these moves at times. I'm not saying you can't do it all the time, but it's like sometimes like it defeats the purpose of like selling your back if you can do all these moves like, you know, out of nowhere and stuff like that. But I mean, it is what. But I guess this is probably Nakamura's most prominent match in a while, where he had not just that he had a good match, it felt like he was like a big deal, and I hope it continues with them or something like that. But with the call, yeah, so I like Becky and Trish. The rest of the stuff was decent. So I was watching on delay, so I didn't get to see the Grayson Waller show, so I just saw the Jey Uso part. But I'm gonna leave you with this. Do you guys think that I was gonna say that, like, instead of just going for the world title, maybe Jey Uso could be the one that ends Gunther's title reign, and that could put him over. But I also think that, you know, a long term, would you guys prefer that, or would you prefer that maybe he beats Seth Rollins, and then because they're keeping him away from Jimmy Uso, maybe for WrestleMania, the Usos could main event night one again as Jey Uso as the world champion. I don't know what you guys think about that. I'll leave you guys to that. I'll call you guys tomorrow. Now I have to get the pay-per-view because of the whole controversy stuff. So I'll
They
see
just suck you back in,
What?
Hansi. You can't give it up.
How did the controversy make you want to watch the pay-per-view?
because now I'm going to be interested if like Tony Khan like gets reactionary and goes, okay, now we got to bring in the big guns or something like that, or if the crowd noise is going to go. At the same time, listen, I know the discourse overshadows, but at the same time, I do want to see Orange Cassidy versus John Moxley. I think this has probably been one of the best title reigns in AEW history. And, you know, I've been waiting for the title reign to end, even though I was going to say they're going to keep it on him for a year. But if Moxley beats him, I think that'll be dope. I know there's going to be a bunch of, because again, there's a bunch of CM Punk fandom online, right? That what they're called, whenever, because Moxley was one of the guys that he had like a beef with. So now whenever Moxley does anything, it's like, oh, he's complete and utter shit. So like if you ignore that as a discourse, then like it's, you know, I still like Moxley. I think
there's a lot of discourse on the internet you should ignore.
Yeah, I know. My bad. But yeah, so I'll leave now. But like, your thoughts if Jey Uso should win the IC or the world title? Peace out, guys. Thank
you, Hansi. Appreciate it.
I don't think at just this juncture I think the match is him and Jimmy, and I don't think it really needs a title in there. That would be my thought. I mean, if he really catches fire, then you can entertain that idea. But I personally, like, you could have it as a goal, and he's one of the contenders in the Rumble. But I think you get to him and Jimmy, and I don't think it needs to be over a title. I think the match is enough that you're going to do that as a first-time match. And I think tonight's move, you would think that they're holding it off potentially to a Mania of some kind of magnitude.
Yeah. I'm still not completely sold on Jey Uso as a single star outside of the bloodline yet. Like, anything he's done with Roman, I think has been very good, except with the exception of maybe like SummerSlam not living up to, I think, pretty lofty expectations. But I think he's still largely improving as a single star with anybody.
Well, this run on Raw will show if he can hang with separate from the bloodline. Like, it's a bit of a test then.
So to suggest him for any sort of like prominent title role, even an IC title role, which is pretty high right now, coming off of Gunther, I might be a little bit premature. So he has to kind of prove something to me to make me feel like he'd be worthwhile, you know, for a guy to follow Gunther. That's it. Those are all. No written feedback today. Unfortunately, no time for a thread right now. Those are our calls. Do you have anything else you want to say, John?
Let's just what they've added to All Out for tomorrow. Of course, there was the strap match with Bryan Danielson and Ricky Starks. And then for the pre-show, we have the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn against Jeff Jarrett, Satnam Singh, and Jay Lethal, with Dennis Rodman in the corner of the Acclaimed. An over-the-budget battle royal, throwback to the very first All In, and Athena, Mercedes Martinez, and Diamante against Hikaru Shida, Willow Nightingale, and Sky Blue. So that is what has been
Athena
added.
made it after all. But in a
Athena made it, yes, but not Billy Starks. So 13 matches on the docket for Sunday night. So we will chat with you. We'll be live after the main event, and that is going to wrap up our show. Thank you to Brandon Thurston. Thank you to John Cena, all of you calling in and tuning in live. We apologize for the hiccup earlier, but thanks for everyone that found the second stream. And that is it for us. Our Payback review is now complete.